You completely ruined my day. Look what you did. Honey, stop it right now. What are you doing?
The wedding was perfect. At least it looked that way. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above the guests. Laughter danced with the music, and every eye was on the stunning bride in her flawless ivory gown. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, joy filled the air. And then a smack. The sound was sharp enough to silence the music, the laughter, even the heartbeat of the room. Every head turned. The bride stood trembling, her hands still raised, eyes blazing with fury. And at her feet, a young woman in a server's uniform, cheek burning red, eyes glistening but defiant. For a moment, time stopped. No one moved. No one breathed. The crowd whispered. Did the bride just slap a worker? But what no one knew, not even the bride, was that this woman she'd just humiliated wasn't a stranger. She was someone bound to her by blood, by secrets, by a truth powerful enough to destroy everything. Because this wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was the moment her perfect world began to crumble. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Tiana Marshall wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, she was a completely different person. She grew up in a modest neighborhood on the south side of town, raised by a single mother who cleaned houses for a living. Tiana knew what it meant to go without. She knew the embarrassment of wearing the same shoes until they literally fell apart. The sting of classmates whispering about her second-hand clothes. But she also knew love. Her mother, despite working 3 jobs, always made time to sit with her at the kitchen table, help with homework, remind her that kindness costs nothing but means everything. Tiana graduated community college with decent grades and got a job as a receptionist at a corporate office downtown. That's where she met Ryan Bennett. Ryan was different from the other executives who barely glanced her way. He smiled at her every morning, asked about her day, remembered small details like her favorite coffee order. He came from money, the kind of family where wealth wasn't just generational, it was practically hereditary. His father had built a real estate empire before passing away when Ryan was young, leaving everything to Ryan's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Bennett. But Ryan never flaunted it. He drove a modest car, wore simple suits, treated everyone from the CEO to the janitor with the same respect. When he asked Tiana out for the first time, she thought it was a joke. A man like him interested in someone like her? But he was serious. Genuinely, deeply serious. Their relationship blossomed over coffee dates that turned into long dinners, weekend drives that turned into weekend trips. Ryan loved Tiana for her warmth, her authenticity, the way she laughed without holding back. He proposed on a rainy Tuesday evening, not at some fancy restaurant, but in her tiny apartment, on one knee with a ring that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She said yes through tears of joy. But something shifted after that ring slid onto her finger. Maybe it was the weight of the diamond, or maybe it was the weight of suddenly becoming Mrs. Ryan Bennett. But Tiana began to change. She started paying attention to labels, to who sat where at dinners, to which country club accepted which members. She hired a wedding planner who specialized in high society events. She became obsessed with perfection, with image, with making sure everyone knew she belonged in Ryan's world. Her mother noticed it first. One afternoon, about 2 months before the wedding, Tiana snapped at a waitress for bringing the wrong salad dressing. It was a small thing, but her mother saw the way Tiana's face twisted with contempt, the way she waved her hand dismissively like the woman was invisible. Later that evening, sitting in Tiana's new luxury apartment that Ryan had bought for them, her mother said something Tiana would remember for the rest of her life. She said, "Baby, I didn't raise you to look down on people because you're walking on higher ground now. Pride always ruins the feast. Always." Tiana laughed it off, kissed her mother's forehead, and assured her she was fine. She was just stressed about the wedding. But deep down, a seed had already been planted. A seed of entitlement that would soon grow into something ugly. Ryan's family had their own history, one that Ryan himself didn't fully know. His father, Marcus Bennett, had been married once before Eleanor. It was a short marriage, barely 3 years, to a woman named Patricia. They had a daughter together, a little girl named Lydia. When the marriage fell apart, Patricia took Lydia and disappeared, cutting off all contact. Marcus remarried Eleanor a few years later, and they had Ryan. Eleanor tried her best to maintain a relationship with Lydia, sent birthday cards, Christmas presents, made phone calls that went unanswered. But eventually life moved on. Lydia became a memory, a name mentioned quietly on rare occasions. Ryan knew he had a half-sister somewhere out there, but he'd never met her, never seen a recent photo. She was a ghost in his family tree. Mrs. Eleanor Bennett was a gracious woman, the kind who donated to shelters, volunteered at food banks, treated her housekeepers like extended family. A few days before the wedding, she sat with Ryan in her garden, sipping tea, and she said something that made him pause. She said, "Ryan, I hope the woman you marry understands that how she treats the people who serve her will show you exactly how she'll treat you when the romance fades. Watch closely, son. Character reveals itself in those moments." Ryan nodded, but he was confident Tiana would be fine. She'd been nothing but sweet to his mother, warm to his friends. He chalked up her occasional sharpness to wedding stress. Everyone gets a little tense before their big day, right? The wedding day arrived like a dream pulled straight from a magazine spread. The venue was an upscale estate with manicured gardens, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a lake. Tiana had spared no expense. Ice sculptures, a live band, a 7-tier cake that looked more like architecture than dessert. She floated through the ceremony in her custom gown. Every stitch perfect, every detail flawless. Ryan looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The vows were beautiful, the kiss was cinematic, and the reception began with champagne towers and applause. For the first hour, everything was perfect. Then the cracks started to show. Tiana became increasingly agitated with the staff. A flower arrangement was slightly off-center, so she berated the event coordinator in front of guests. A photographer took a candid shot she didn't approve of, so she demanded he delete it immediately, her voice rising. Ryan gently tried to calm her down, whispering that everyone was watching, but she brushed him off, insisting everything had to be perfect. Guests began exchanging glances, awkward smiles, quiet murmurs. One of Ryan's college friends whispered to his wife, "Is she always like this?" The wife just shook her head, sipping her champagne, clearly uncomfortable. Then came the moment that would change everything. The catering staff was moving through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres and drinks. Among them was a young woman mid-20s, with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor. Her name tag read Lydia, though no one paid it any attention. She was just another server, invisible in the sea of tuxedos and gowns. She approached Tiana's table carefully, balancing a tray of red wine. As she leaned in to place a glass down, someone bumped her from behind, another server rushing past. The tray tilted. Just a few drops of wine splashed onto the edge of Tiana's gown, barely noticeable, just a small dark spot near the hem. But Tiana saw it. And she exploded. She shot up from her seat, eyes blazing, and before anyone could react, she grabbed Lydia by the arm and spun her around. Lydia stammered an apology, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, someone bumped me, I didn't mean to, I'll get something to clean it right away." But Tiana wasn't listening. Her face was red, her voice cutting through the music like a knife. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? Do you? Of course you don't. People like you could never afford something like this. You're clumsy, careless, completely incompetent." Lydia's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her head down, whispering another apology. That's when Tiana raised her hand and slapped her across the face. The sound was sickening. Sharp. Final. The entire room seemed to inhale at once. The band stopped playing mid-note. Conversations died. Every eye in that ballroom turned toward the bride and the server. Lydia stood there, frozen, one hand on her cheek, tears now streaming freely. She didn't fight back, didn't yell, didn't make a scene. She just looked at Tiana with an expression that wasn't anger. It was sadness. Deep, aching sadness. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, her shoulders shaking. Ryan stood up, his face pale, mouth open but no words coming out. His mother, Mrs. Eleanor Bennett, was sitting at a nearby table with some family friends. When she saw Lydia's face, really saw it for the first time that night, she gasped. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Guests started whispering, some pulling out their phones, others just staring in disbelief. One of Tiana's bridesmaids leaned over and hissed, "Tiana, what the hell was that?" Tiana, still shaking with adrenaline, snapped back, "She ruined my dress. She needed to learn some respect." But her voice wavered. Somewhere deep down, beneath the anger and the pride, a small voice was asking, "What did I just do?" Ryan finally found his words. He said, "Tiana, that was completely out of line. Completely." She opened her mouth to defend herself, but he was already walking away, heading toward his mother, who had stood up and was moving toward the exit where Lydia had disappeared. Mrs. Bennet's hands were trembling as she pushed through the crowd. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She reached the hallway just as Lydia was about to leave through a side door. "Wait!" Mrs. Bennet called out, her voice breaking. Lydia stopped but didn't turn around. "Please wait." Slowly Lydia turned, and the two women locked eyes. Recognition hit like lightning. Mrs. Bennet's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! Lydia? Is that really you?" Lydia's lips trembled. She nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It's me." Mrs. Bennet rushed forward and pulled her into a hug, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I'd lost you forever. I tried so hard to find you, to stay in touch, but your mother moved and I never heard from you again. How long have you been here? Why didn't you tell us?" Lydia pulled back gently, wiping her eyes. "I didn't know it was Ryan's wedding. I just needed the job. The catering company doesn't always tell us whose event we're working. When I got here and saw the name on the programs, I almost left. But I thought, maybe I could just see him from a distance, see how he turned out. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I never wanted that." Mrs. Bennet's heart shattered. She held Lydia's face in her hands like she was a child again. "You could never be trouble, sweetheart. You're family. You've always been family." Inside the ballroom, the tension was thick enough to cut. Tiana sat back down at her table, trying to compose herself, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Guests were still whispering, pointing, some clearly recording everything on their phones. Ryan stood near the entrance, torn between going after his mother and confronting his new wife. Mrs. Bennet and Lydia stood in that hallway for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Lydia explained everything. After her parents divorced, her mother struggled with addiction and instability. They moved constantly from city to city, couch to couch. By the time Lydia was 16, she was essentially raising herself. She worked part-time jobs to pay for food, finished high school by the skin of her teeth, and spent her early 20s bouncing between low-wage jobs just trying to survive. She never blamed Ryan or his family. She understood that life just happened that way sometimes. But she'd always wondered about them, always hoped that maybe one day she'd reconnect. She never imagined it would be like this. Mrs. Bennet was sobbing now, holding Lydia's hands like she might disappear again if she let go. "You should have been at this wedding as a guest, as family, not as someone serving drinks. This is all wrong. Come with me. Come back inside. Ryan needs to see you. He needs to know." Lydia hesitated. "I don't want to ruin his day. It's his wedding. He's happy. I can just go." But Mrs. Bennet shook her head firmly. "No. You're not going anywhere. Not this time." She linked her arm through Lydia's and led her back toward the ballroom. As they entered, the room fell silent again. All eyes turned to them. Ryan, standing near the head table, saw his mother walking in with a young woman in a server's uniform, both of them crying. Confusion crossed his face, then concern. Mrs. Bennet walked straight to the center of the room, Lydia beside her. Tiana, still sitting at the head table, looked up, her face a mixture of confusion and dread. Mrs. Bennet's voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the whispers. "Everyone, I need your attention for a moment." The room went completely silent. Even the servers stopped moving. "There's something that needs to be said. Something that can't wait." She turned to Tiana, her eyes hard but not cruel. "Tiana, the woman you just humiliated, the woman you struck in front of everyone here, is not just a server. Her name is Lydia Bennet. She's Ryan's sister." The words hung in the air like smoke. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a fork. A glass shattered somewhere in the back. Tiana's face went white. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what she'd just heard. What? She whispered. Ryan's legs almost gave out. He stared at Lydia, really looked at her, and suddenly he saw it. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile, features he'd seen in old photographs his mother kept tucked away. Lydia, he said, his voice cracking. She nodded, tears streaming. Yan. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. He was crying too, openly, in front of everyone. I can't believe it's you. All these years, I thought I'd never see you. I thought I'd lost you. She hugged him back, her shoulders shaking. I'm here. I'm here. Around them, guests watched in stunned silence. Some were crying too, moved by the reunion. Others were looking at Tiana with expressions ranging from pity to outright disgust. Tiana stood up slowly, her legs shaking, her entire world tilting on its axis. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a broken whisper. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Lydia pulled away from Ryan and turned to face her. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Tiana expected anger, expected Lydia to unleash everything she had every right to feel. But instead, Lydia's voice was soft, almost gentle. That's the thing about pride, Tiana. It blinds us. It makes us see people as beneath us, as less than, as invisible. You didn't know who I was because you never bothered to see me as a person at all. Just a servant. Just someone in your way. The words hit like a hammer. Tiana's knees buckled and she sat back down hard, her face in her hands. Ryan turned to his new wife. And the disappointment in his eyes was worse than any anger could have been. How could you do that, Tiana? How could you treat anyone like that, let alone my sister? She looked up at him, mascara running, desperation in her voice. Ryan, please, I didn't know. If I had known, he cut her off. That's the problem. You shouldn't have to know someone to treat them with basic decency. You've been changing, Tiana. I've seen it. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was just stress, but tonight, this is who you've become. And I don't know if I can accept that. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Tiana's bridesmaids looked away, embarrassed. Her mother, sitting near the back, had tears in her eyes, remembering her own warning that Tiana had brushed off. Mrs. Bennet stepped forward, placing a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Let's not do this here. Not like this. Everyone, please continue enjoying the evening. We need some time as a family. Slowly, awkwardly, the guests began to disperse, conversations resuming in hushed tones. The band started playing again, something slow and somber. Ryan, his mother, and Lydia moved to a private room off the main hall. Tiana tried to follow, but Ryan held up a hand. Not now, Tiana. Please. She stood there, alone in her beautiful gown, in the middle of her perfect wedding, watching her husband walk away with the family she'd just alienated. Guests avoided her eyes. Some left early, whispering to each other as they headed for the exits. Her maid of honor approached cautiously. Tiana, maybe you should go freshen up. Take a moment. But Tiana didn't move. She just stood there, numb, replaying everything in her mind. In the private room, Ryan sat beside Lydia, holding her hand like he was afraid she might vanish. Mrs. Bennet sat across from them, still crying softly, smiling through her tears. They talked for over an hour. Lydia told them everything. Her whole life since the divorce, the struggles, the loneliness, the times she almost gave up. Ryan listened, his heart breaking with every word. He kept apologizing, even though none of it was his fault. I should have looked for you harder. I should have done something. Lydia squeezed his hand. You were a kid, Ryan. You didn't even know me. This isn't on you. But he shook his head. You're my sister. That should have been enough. Mrs. Bennet finally spoke, her voice hoarse from crying. We're going to make this right. You're not going anywhere. You're staying with us. You're part of this family, and you always have been. Lydia wanted to argue, to say she didn't want Charity, but the truth was, she was exhausted. Exhausted from struggling alone, from pretending she didn't need anyone. So she just nodded and let herself be held. Outside the room, Tiana sat on a velvet bench in the hallway, her head in her hands. Guests were leaving now, offering polite goodbyes, but their eyes said everything their mouths didn't. Judgment. Disappointment. Disgust. Her mother finally found her there and sat down beside her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then her mother said quietly, "I warned you, baby. I told you pride ruins the feast." Tiana's voice was barely a whisper. "I know, Mama. I know." Her mother pulled her close, letting her cry. "So what are you going to do now?" Tiana didn't have an answer. The wedding was supposed to continue. There was still dinner, still dancing, still a whole night planned. But the heart had gone out of it. The vendors packed up early. The DJ played to an emptying room. By midnight, the venue was almost empty. Tiana changed out of her gown in a dressing room, hands shaking so badly she could barely unzip it. She put on jeans and a sweater, washed off her makeup, and sat there staring at herself in the mirror. Who had she become? When did looking down on people become easier than looking them in the eye? She thought about her mother, working 3 jobs, coming home bone-tired but always kind. She thought about Ryan, the way he treated everyone with respect, the way he'd loved her before she'd started trying to be someone she wasn't. And she thought about Lydia, standing there with a red mark on her face, not fighting back, just looking sad. Ryan came to find her eventually. He knocked softly on the dressing room door. "Tiana, can we talk?" She opened it, her face puffy from crying. They walked out to the garden, away from the few remaining guests. The moon was bright, the air cool. They sat on a stone bench near a fountain. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Ryan said, "I don't know how to move forward from this." Tiana's heart clenched. "Are you leaving me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I love you, Tiana. Or at least, I love who you used to be. But tonight, you humiliated someone I care about, someone who's been through hell and back. And the worst part is, you didn't even see her as a person. Just an inconvenience." Tiana's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I don't know what happened to me. I got so caught up in trying to fit into your world that I lost myself." He looked at her, really looked at her. "My world isn't about money or status, Tiana. It never was. My mom grew up poor. My dad built his business from nothing. We've always valued people, not things. If you thought you had to change to fit in, you were wrong." She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can." Ryan was quiet for a moment, then said, "A marriage built on pride can't last. I wanted a partner, someone who'd stand beside me, not above everyone else. I need to know that you understand that. Really understand it." She nodded through her tears. "Ido. I swear Ido. Please, Ryan. Give me a chance to make this right." He stood up, looking down at her. "I need time, Tiana. I need to be with my sister right now. She's the priority. We'll talk later. But right now I need space." He walked away, leaving her alone in the garden. Tiana sat there until the sun started to rise, watching the sky turn from black to gray to pink. She thought about everything, every choice, every moment that led her here. And she made a decision. She wasn't going to let pride destroy her life. Not anymore. 3 days after the wedding, Tiana showed up at Mrs. Bennett's house. She didn't call ahead. She just drove there, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding, half expecting to be turned away. Mrs. Bennett answered, surprise crossing her face. "Tiana." Tiana's voice was small. "Mrs. Bennett, I know I have no right to be here. But I need to see Lydia. I need to apologize properly. Please." Mrs. Bennett studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. "She's in the living room with Ryan." Tiana walked in, her stomach in knots. Lydia and Ryan were sitting on the couch, talking and laughing about something. When they saw her, the laughter died. Ryan stood up, his expression guarded. "Tiana." She looked at Lydia, and all the words she'd rehearsed fled her mind. She just said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What I did was inexcusable. I was cruel and proud, and I treated you like you were nothing. But you're not nothing. You're Ryan's sister. You're family. And even if you weren't, even if you were just a stranger, you deserved better. I've been so focused on trying to look like I belong that I forgot how to actually be a good person. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to hear that I'm sorry." Lydia looked at her for a long time. Tiana braced herself for anger, for rejection. But then Lydia stood up and crossed the room. And she hugged her. Tiana froze, shocked. Then slowly hugged her back, tears streaming down her face. Lydia whispered, "We all mess up, Tiana. Pride gets the best of everyone sometimes. But you came here. You faced it. That takes courage." Tiana pulled back, shaking her head. "I don't deserve your kindness." Lydia smiled sadly. "Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway. We're family now. Let's start as sisters, not strangers." Ryan watched this exchange, his own eyes wet. He walked over and put his arms around both of them. "We're going to figure this out. Together." Over the following weeks, Tiana worked hard to repair the damage. She reached out to every guest who'd witnessed the incident and apologized. She donated a significant amount to organizations that supported struggling families, something she did quietly without publicity. She volunteered at a local shelter, serving food, cleaning, doing whatever was needed, relearning humility one shift at a time. And most importantly, she spent time with Lydia. They had coffee, went for walks, talked about life. Slowly, a genuine friendship formed. Lydia told her stories about her childhood, the hard times, the moments of unexpected kindness from strangers. Tiana listened, really listened, and began to understand how narrow her perspective had become. One afternoon, sitting in a small cafe, Lydia said something that Tiana would never forget. "You know, Tiana, the hardest thing about being poor isn't the lack of money. It's the invisibility. People look right through you. Like you're a ghost. I've been invisible most of my life. But I learned that every person has a story, has worth, regardless of their bank account or their job title. I think you're learning that too." Tiana nodded, tears in her eyes. "I am. And I'm grateful you're patient enough to teach me." Lydia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We're all still learning, Tiana. Every single day." Ryan and Tiana's marriage didn't magically fix itself overnight. They went to counseling, had hard conversations, worked through the hurt. There were moments Tiana worried it was over, that she'd destroyed something beautiful beyond repair. But Ryan, despite everything, still loved her. He saw the effort she was making, the genuine change, and slowly, trust began to rebuild. 6 months after the wedding, they renewed their vows in a small, private ceremony. Just family. Just love. No ice sculptures, no 7-tier cake, no perfection. Just two people choosing each other again, with open eyes and humble hearts. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If you were Lydia, could you have forgiven Tiana? Could you have opened your heart to someone who humiliated you, who struck you, who made you feel invisible? Or would the wound have been too deep? Think about that. Think about the people in your own life you've maybe overlooked, dismissed, treated as less than. Maybe it's the person who cleans your office, or delivers your food, or serves your coffee. Maybe it's someone closer, someone whose pain you've ignored because it was inconvenient. How would you feel if the roles were reversed? If you were the one on the other side of someone's pride? Tiana learned the hardest way possible that how we treat people when we think no one important is watching reveals everything about who we really are. She learned that kindness isn't a luxury you extend when it's convenient. It's a choice you make every single day, with every single person. And maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful thing about this whole story isn't the slap or the revelation or even the reunion. It's the forgiveness. It's Lydia choosing grace over grudges, choosing family over pride. That's the kind of strength that changes lives. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about how you treat the people around you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. And stick around because next time, we've got a story that'll remind you why the truth always finds its way to the light, no matter how deep you try to bury it. Until then, take care of each other out there. And remember, the measure of a person isn't in what they wear or what they own. It's in how they make others feel. Choose kindness. Always choose kindness.